Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2026 Ducati Desert X. Now, a lot has been written and recorded and filmed about this bike, and of course, if you are a hardcore off-roader, you kind of know a lot about this bike, and I may or may not be able to help you too much. But if you're curious about this bike and how it fits into the greater adventure bike marketplace, from the perspective of how things are, like how things feel, what things look like, comparisons between that kind of thing, that's what this review is going to be. I'm not going to be ripping it up and jumping this thing off of, two-story tall buildings. That's for the guys who can ride this thing way better than I can. But what I am going to do is try to give you a different perspective on this bike to try to give you a good sense on if this is the bike for you. So of course, I can come back to this bike over and over again. I'm filming in the Ducati showroom here at Rally Motoplex. They give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup, whether that's Ducati, BMW, Triumph, Indian, all sorts of stuff, Suzuki, Yamaha, and I know I'm missing some, Royal Enfield, there's all kinds of them here. That's where I'm filming, and they give me complete access to all of their stuff. So if you have questions that I don't get to in this video, by all means, let me know in the comments below, and I can help you out. Do me a favor, give this video a like for Rally Motoplex, and if you want to help my channel grow, which is how I get access to stuff like this, just do me a favor, find a couple videos you like on the channel, watch them to the end. That really helps. All right, let's get going with this review. So if you've done your homework on this bike, you'll know that it consistently ends up among the leaders for all kinds of people who love adventure bikes. Now, I happen to own an adventure bike. It's the complete opposite of this. It's a Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, which is a single cylinder, 40 horsepower. This thing, of course, has 110 horsepower. Totally different things, totally different feels altogether, but I like adventure bikes for the ability to explore. This is too much of an adventure bike for what I need, but sometimes buying a little extra doesn't hurt. And it's not just that this has more performance than I need. I think some of the things I love about this bike is the fact that, hey, I'm okay if it has more performance than I'll ever use, but there are a lot of really nice things on this bike, even, compared to all sorts of other bikes, not of course compared to my Royal Enfield, but compared to all kinds of other bikes that really make it feel like a class above. Ducati, of course, is a luxury brand, and this thing really adds some nice luxuries in that you don't always get in other areas. Now, I will say, it's curious to know why this always remains among the leaders when you've got, even in this own showroom, competitors from Triumph, competitors from BMW, and more. So let's take a look at some of the little details that really set this apart. So let's start at the front wheel, we'll work our way back. So if you've seen my videos before, you know I love to start at the front wheel because it talks about manufacturer's intent. And here you have everything you could possibly want in a true adventure bike. Now, it's worth pointing this out because sometimes a bike will look like an adventure bike, but there will be differences. This is a true 21-inch front wheel. So of course, a lot of bikes have 19-inch front wheel. That gives you a little bit better on-road kind of balance kind of thing. I would argue that this thing's perfectly fine on-road for most people, the way they're gonna ride this. But again, you've got a 90, 21-inch front wheel. So right away, you've got the off-road size that you want. You also match that with a 18-inch wheel out back, which is 1 inch bigger than a sport tire bike, which is usually 17-inch. So we'll talk about the rear tire when we get there. But then we look at everything here. You've got the upside-down forks, obviously fully protected here. So any kind of dirt and grime is not going to get into your fork seals. So you've got that. That's typical stuff for an adventure bike. Big thing, of course, you see is the Brembo brakes. Dual caliper Brembo brakes. These are essentially sport bike tires, which is kind of what, or sport bike brakes, excuse me, which is kind of what you would expect from Ducati. So you've got really, really strong braking. But the other thing with Brembos is they give you a really precise feel, which can be very nice off-road as well. You want to know exactly what you're doing, exactly what the wheels are doing, and you have that precision. So overall here, good stuff. I should also point out little nice things that come on adventure bikes. You always, like this has a sort of a textured kind of feel. You don't want really shiny rims. They kind of show everything on an adventure bike. You also want tubeless tires in your rims, and these spokes, of course, are spoked wheels that give you the strength that you would want, but they are tubeless. So that's, again, the best of both worlds for the true adventure biker, which is kind of what you expect. So everything here, absolute high end or top quality. There's nothing that's going to really beat what you see here anywhere in the marketplace. And of course, this isn't the most expensive bike either. One other thing worth pointing out, you probably can't see it right now. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit to the radiator. This is a simple little thing. Obviously, this comes with a radiator guard. I don't know if I zoom down enough. Yeah, you can see a little bit of the bash guard there. That's of course standard. A couple little things. This is a curved radiator here. It's just a little bit extra quality. First of all, the curve allows for more cooling per square inch, so that keeps the bike narrow. Again, sometimes you'll just see a squared off cheaper version, but Ducati doesn't cheap out on a lot of stuff. Again, there's the headlights there. We'll take a look at them a little bit later maybe. Windshield's well. One thing that's interesting about the windshield, it's not adjustable. We'll talk about that as we get to the riding position, but let's take a look at a couple other things on this bike. Taking a look at the heart of this bike, you have a 937cc engine producing 110 horsepower and just over 62 foot-pounds of torque. What that means is it's kind of that perfect power blend. You've got sport bike level power here, so you can absolutely do whatever you need to whoever's on the road that thinks they're better than you, but you also have all the torque you would want and all the horsepower you would want for off-road. So again, whether it's slow speed stuff or higher speed stuff like the Baja Rally, you've got the engine you need here. We could go on about the engine for a long time, but I just want to point out the one thing about this engine that you notice is it is very, very narrow. Different bikes have a lot more width to them. Something like the BMW has a totally different style engine, which has a lot of width. Narrow bikes, to me, are really nice, especially when you go off-road. The other thing we should talk about is the weight, and we'll do that as we jump on this bike and show you what it's like to stand across. So jumping across any adventure bike, you have a tall seat height. That's just what you need, or what you end up with when you have something that needs to be tall enough to give you the ground clearance, give you the suspension travel, and also give you a comfortable all-day seating position. Remember, a true adventure bike allows you to go for long all-day rides, so you can't just have the foot pegs high and the seat down low for the average person, because that will become uncomfortable. So this is the standard seat height. It goes 34.4 inches. Now there are flexibility. I'm about 6 feet tall, proportional 6-footer. I got my toes on the ground here. Can't quite put my heels to the ground as is. Now, if you are shorter than me, there are absolutely options. You can get a low seat height. You can also get a low seat height with a low suspension package, so it lowers the suspension a little bit. If you are lighter and smaller, don't worry about losing suspension travel too much, because although the ground clearance will lessen a little bit with that lower seat height, you also won't be compressing the suspension as much as a bigger person. So a lot of time a taller person is a heavier person than certain smaller or shorter people, so you have to keep that in mind as well. You can also go with a taller seat height. If you're taller than me, or if you just want a taller seat height to get more leg room, you can do that. So you can see, for me, this is like a perfect riding position. A couple things that are not always pointed out. Handlebars are nice and wide here. That's what you would normally want in a true adventure bike. The square seating position, again, something you would normally want as well. This one does have a steering damper here, so if you're jumping and doing stuff like that, it's going to help you keep that wheel where you need to, especially as you're landing. If you're wheeling, that kind of thing, that's all going to help. But we're talking about ergonomics here. So we talked about the narrowness of this bike, and that's worth pointing out for sure. Now remember I talked about my Royal Enfield, the 450cc that makes nowhere near this horsepower? It's 432 pounds. This is 463 pounds. Now if you consider that I put a few accessories on, this thing's basically the same weight as my Royal Enfield. So that's the other thing you're getting here, is a bike that does not feel heavy. For 110 horsepower, for close to 1000cc, it definitely feels more like a middleweight as far as the feel. It doesn't really feel a whole lot different than a Tenere. In fact, compared to the Yamaha Tenere that I was last on, this one feels even more manageable. So that's another strength to this bike that a lot of people kind of forget. Now, we talked about the lack of a adjustment in the windscreen here. We're going to put it on the side stand here. One of those reasons is because you want to be able to lean way forward. So the windscreen is fairly upright. You want to be able to load up that front wheel off-road, and you can do that on this bike and have that out of your way. Would it be nice to be adjustable? Probably. Is this more of a off-road bike than a touring bike? Yes, although you can get packages that make it a touring bike as well. I will say though, it definitely feels more manageable. As you can see with my foot up here, my other foot's flat-footed. I'm almost level on the bike. I have no real feelings that this is a massive bike, because it's really not. It's a large bike, but it feels like a middleweight bike. That's a huge, huge strength for this bike. I should talk about seat comfort as well. You can move well forward here, lean against the tank because the tank rides up, that's what you want. And I have some good seating position here I can move around on. And if you had to go to the rear seat to get the real kind of stretched out, get your weight to the rear, you can easily do that as well, even on this two-piece seat. So again, everything you could possibly want kind of built in. They've really thought out who rides this bike, and they're kind of giving you everything you want. So we're gonna look at the dash really quickly, and I want to talk about some of the controls here as well. Let's do that right now. So taking a look at the dash here, if you come from lower end bike, you'll see the Tenere does this. Of course, that's more of a rally type function. They have the sort of up and down dashes instead of the side to side dashes. Ducati dashes are interesting. They can be a real mix of great or not so great. Some people are going to look at something like a BMW and say, hey, that's better. But as far as the information that you need, everything is here. You have the round tachometer, and I can't say this enough, but a round tachometer allows you to pay no attention to the numbers and just look at where the dial is, and you know where you are. Proportional to your red line. So the different, fancy line graphs, that kind of thing, can sometimes be hard to tell at a glance, or maybe it's just me because I think this is better. But again, simple is often better. Side stands down, you can see that. Speed is right there. Neutral is there. We're not going to go through the tech on this video, but you have all the information you need, your ABS modes, your traction control, those kind of things. So everything you could want is right down here, always within view. And then you have a number of things you can change on this dash as well. So again, this isn't a full dash review of this bike. If you want to see something like that, we can go through that in a future video. Just let me know below you want to know more about the dash on this bike, and I will make sure I do that. But I also want to talk about some of the controls and how they feel, because that matters as well, and that's a real standout of this bike. So taking a look clutch side, a couple things you want to see. Obviously, some people replace these. These are plasticky. What they're going to do is keep gravel off your hands. If you're dropping this bike, you may want to replace them with something a little firmer. I bet you Ducati probably has an accessory there, although that would be hopefully fine for me. One thing you're going to notice on this bike that you don't always feel, or at least if you're moving from a middleweight to something like this, or something lower end to something like this, is as you pull the clutch lever here, it has a really, really positive linear type feel to it. It's a really good thing. It is a heavier clutch. It's not something that's super light, but the feel is hard to explain. If you just walk around this showroom and grab every clutch in the place, you're going to find that this is one of the best feeling clutches. Now, it is reach adjustable, so is the brake lever. This is a Brembo master cylinder here. Of course, Brembo brakes, everything there. And then you have typical controls. Now, some controls are easier and harder to do. We'll save that for some of the dash review if we do that in the future, but little simple stuff. Over here, you've got a little bit of a click there to high beam, and of course the trigger for the low beam. You've got your hazard lights up here. Any adventure bike, any touring type bike should have a hazard light easily within reach, and that is ABS off there as well. So these are two buttons you're not going to hit all the time. They're a little bit harder to reach. You're never going to hit them by accident, but again, you can switch that ABS mode right there. Then you've got various menu items. This is fairly easy to work. There are some better controls out there, but again, this one works fine. You can press this in like that, or you can go up or down, obviously. Cruise control, nice and easy to reach there, signals, and your horn down there. So simple stuff over there, but let's go to the other side now and look at some of those controls. So really quickly, you can't see the brake lever too well, but of course that is adjustable as well for reach. One of the nice things about adjustable reach is not just to fit your hands, it allows you to have that grab point exactly precisely where you need it. And when you have Brembo systems right throughout, you really get that precision dialed in the way you want. And that can be something that matters to people. You can see your heated grips up here, really nice to have those included. When you combine heated grips with the shields here, you really do have the ability to keep your hands warm, and that can extend the season. And as someone who's filming here in Canada in October, as we're heading into the cool weather, definitely something that is nice to have. Start and kill switch all mounted right there, and then of course your extra fog light type, extra headlight buttons right there, all built into the central headlight unit. So all of this stuff is really good. We're going to zoom out just a little tiny bit and take a look at the mirrors there. The mirrors on these, standard mirrors, they are inside or roughly inside of the grip here. And that's something you want to see on a true adventure bike, just because if you drop this, they're not going to right away break. Of course, some people will upgrade them anyways, but it is worth noting that, again, every little detail has been thought about on a bike like this. So I didn't mention a lot of the obvious stuff, like the adjustable suspension, all the stuff that you would expect on a bike like this, but I will talk about who should buy this bike, because I think if you're in that middleweight kind of adventure bike and you're thinking, do I want to stretch and step up and get a bike that's for everything? I think this is really worth it. So to me, why would you step up to this bike compared to some of the others? Well, first of all, I think Triumph and BMW are certainly great touring bikes that are also great off-road. What I will say about something like this, though, is it does offer you the real true feel of a middleweight, in the sense that when you just sit on it, the weight and that kind of thing. but it also offers you the premium feel. So the switch gear, the touch points, that kind of thing really steps up to premium, including the engine, of course. It also has long service intervals, so 15,000 kilometer, or I think 2-year, 15,000 kilometer, 9,000 mile service intervals. So that's, you know, some people think, oh, Ducati, you got to have service intervals, or performance vehicles, you have to have shorter service intervals. That's not the case with this bike at all. So you're basically, if you're like a lot of people, doing an oil change once a year. If you're in Canada, if you drive a lot more, then obviously you can figure that out for yourself. But I will say that I can definitely see why people would move to this from shopping in that middleweight adventure. You're getting more power, you're getting a whole bunch other niceties, but it really isn't any more intimidating. For me, it's far more than I'm gonna need for my off-road ability, but I could buy a bike like this and be the last bike I'm gonna buy for an off-road adventure bike, because, like I said, right now my adventure skill level, my adventure interest is to have an exploring bike, something I can take on the roads but also go off-road to any lighter trail, gravel road that I possibly want to. As I start going down those, my skills are increasing, my interest is increasing in true off-road. And to me, I feel like this bike is a lot closer to being the overall handling, the overall feel of some of those middleweight bikes, while offering you a whole lot more performance and a whole lot more niceties. So if you are on the fence about stepping up to a larger adventure bike, there are some that are worth being on the fence about. But I would say the Ducati here, if it's in your budget, is absolutely a worthwhile upgrade that will not be nearly as intimidating as you, or maybe even I, have thought it would be. So there you go. There's my quick 2026 overview, or my overview of this 2026 Ducati Desert X. There will be more coming up this year. There's variants of this bike that I'm going to cover. I'm going to cover every Ducati in this showroom over the next year. So anything you want to see, let me know, and I'll make sure I get it on film for you. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.